So we've talked about the SEC, we've talked about the ACC, we've talked about the Big Ten, and pretty much we already talked about, the Big 12 with Oklahoma being the big favorite. But what about the Pac-12? Because that seems like it's always wide open. It's probably going to again be wide open this year. But who are really the 2 or 3 teams that could win the conference?
Oh, man, you say it, everyone keeps saying it's wide open, but for me, I feel like there's been the team that dominates. I mean, Oregon is looking to win their 3rd straight Pac-12 title, and they have just been leaps and bounds better than everybody else. And last year, they won it kind of by default, to be honest. Washington qualified for the Pac-12 title, got kicked out because of COVID. Their arch rival gets to go in Oregon, and they upset USC for the Pac-12 title. So just imagine how Washington feels right now. But you remember, Oregon won it last year, man, with Penei Sewell, a top 10 draft pick, opting out, with Javon Holland opting out, who was a top, I believe, 35 pick. They had like 6 players opt out who are going to be future NFL draft picks. So Oregon was struck really hard by COVID and still found a way to pull it out. Mario Cristobal for me, so I get it. I'm from Alabama. I live in Kansas now. Southern fans who, make up a lot of college football and a lot of strong voices of college football just ignore the Pac-12, which really aggravates me on our show. And that's why we cover a lot of Pac-12, because they just forget that it's out there. It comes on at, 11 o'clock on the East Coast. No one stays up to watch it. I understand. But Oregon's a real contender this year, in my opinion, for the college football playoff with how that roster is built. Mario Cristobal has done an excellent job. And in case you guys don't know who that is, he comes from the Nick Saban coaching tree and was the offensive line coach when Alabama was running through the early 2010s. So he knows how to build an SEC team, and that's what he's done. He started up by building the offensive line and moving outwards, and that defense is legit. I mean, right now, they have the number 1 defensive line in the Pac-12, the number 2 secondary, and the number 1 linebacking core. And when you look at Kayvon Thibodeau, who, outside of Derek Stingley at Clemson, might be the best defensive player in the entire country. On top of that, you have 2 5-star linebackers who were top 10 players in their class manning the 2 linebacker spots. And then on the back end of the defense, Bennett Williams is a promising young talent. Michael Wright steps in at the DB1 spot. Jamal Hill steps in on the other side. And Verone McKinley III is the next great safety, in my opinion, to come out of Oregon. So personally, I honestly love what Oregon has on the defensive side of the ball. The only question I have about Oregon this year, man, is Anthony Brown at quarterback. I have a lot of questions. We did a whole show in terms of fall camp rumors this week where we're going through talking about the latest quarterback battles, things like that. Anthony Brown's a transfer from Boston College. He has over 20 games of experience, but when he was at Boston College, he wasn't great. I mean, his true passing grade, I think, was like a 65, according to Pro Football Focus. He struggled with turnovers a lot. And he, in this most recent practice, he was 1 for 6 in the 3rd down, segment of the practice, and had trouble with his accuracy. And why this matters to me is because they have a 5-star behind him. The kid's name is Todd Thompson. He's the highest rated Oregon quarterback commit, since Marcus Mariota, and he's a higher rated player than Mariota was. He threw for almost 11,000 yards in his high school at Arizona, over 100 touchdowns. The kid's legit. He's already like 6'5", 220. He looks every bit the part to be the next great quarterback, but they're not giving him a chance at the starting position. And I'm very worried that Anthony Brown's going to limit the potential of this Oregon team, because if you take a blind resume and blank out the quarterback, that roster is a national championship roster, in my opinion. But Anthony Brown is not a national championship quarterback, and that's where I worry about Oregon. And then, of course, USC is going to challenge. Keaton Slovis is the real deal, but they lost a lot in the transfer portal. The D-line's there, but what's that secondary going to be like? And then I would watch out for Washington, too. That was a team that slid into the back end of that AP Top 25 we saw released last week. They were at 20. They have a 5-star quarterback waiting in the wings as well. And so I'm very concerned about how that's going to work out. Jimmy Lake taking over for Chris Peterson is very, very difficult. Always replacing a legend is hard. Washington's defense is going to be one of the elites of the country, but it's a question mark about how far can that offense take them. So there's a lot of question marks around Pac-12 contenders, but like you said, I think it's Washington, USC, Oregon are the realistic contenders for that conference.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I didn't really know all that about Oregon, but that is interesting to know. And yeah, Oregon, of course, won last year because of, the whole thing with Washington. And then, of course, USC. I wasn't super impressed with USC last year. And, of course, there was only, 7 games? Or I think it was 7 games, right? It was a really short season for the Pac-12.
I think it was 6, actually. I think they were 5-1 after. And going into the Pac-12 title game, I think they played 5 games. The Pac-12 commissioner, Larry Scott, he's fired. He resigned now. He never should have been able to keep his job, man. He butchered last season for the Pac-12 and really cost a lot of great athletes a chance at a national title.
Yeah. And just the whole West. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I think the Pac-12 is always forgotten, at least in the football terms. But it just is at one time in the mid-2000s, the Pac-12 was the conference, or was one of the conferences that people talked about. But, we'll see what happens within the next few years. I know they have a new commissioner, and maybe with the merger with the ACC and Big Ten, it's going to help a lot more.